Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We review one vendor or the solution independently. And for today, we have a very interesting solution. It's called Epicor BisTrack. And you are going to be thinking this is just some small solution that is probably going to die very soon. But we will review the differentiator of the solution, and towards the end of the show, we'll ask you if you feel that's going to happen, because this is very, very, very interesting overall from the positioning perspective. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. I am going to start with my intro. I am Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. On that note, I am going to move to Dave for his intro.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. My name is Dave Crysler, and I own an operations consulting business working with leaders in the manufacturing and distribution spaces to help them create systems that drive growth and operate with excellence. So excited to be here with you today, Sam. Thanks.
And amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Dave. And if you're in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you guys post your questions and comments. We typically try to cover them during the show. And if we run out of time, then we'll make sure that you are going to receive your answers. On that note, Dave, I am going to start with the quick briefing of the solution, how they fit into the Epicor value chain, and then overarching value chain, I guess. And then we can listen to your commentary as well in terms of what you think. So in terms of a quick rundown of different solutions that we have reviewed from Epicor, obviously we have done the corporate strategy. We have done, if I remember, Kinetic, Profit 21, Eclipse, those three. Do you recall if we have done any other Epicor ones?
I don't think so. Not that I recall, Sam.
Yeah, obviously they have a lot of products.
Yeah,
Epicor has a lot of products as well, similar to ECI and Infor. In fact, I mean, this is the point that we are going to be talking about comparison between Infor's strategy, Epicor's strategy, ECI's strategy, and in general, they are very comparable. Okay, so their goal is going to be to put as much as possible in the suite. That's how these companies work in general. That's their positioning in the market. But the way Epicor approaches things is very different from how Epicor does things versus ECI. I would think ECI probably have similar go-to-market strategy as Epicor. And the way Epicor likes to think and the kind of solutions they have acquired, they are going after very, very, very small ecosystems. Okay. And when I say small ecosystem, it's very niche down. And typically these ecosystems are created around either buying group or a magazine or a media company. So it's a very interesting play, the way it works. Obviously, media companies, buying groups, they all are very tied together. So in this particular case, when you look at Epicor, BisTrack is a very unique solution. Okay. And in this particular case, they are trying to go after, they call it as more of the LBM market, which is the lumber building management and a little bit of metal market. But, if you look at the solution, it's really designed towards building material contractors and in building material dealers as well. There is a very, 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 very thin slice there. It is really going to be for all of those kitchen decor, windows, as well as door sort of dealers. And by the way, not manufacturers, even though they might be doing a little bit of manufacturing as well. But this is really designed for the dealers, and that's how specific it gets. And it's a very interesting business model. And there are some layers in this particular conversation, as well as in the solution that you're going to see, that they go through very different planning cycle. They have very different estimation cycle, and that's why this solution is very, very, very critical and important. If you even Epicor tried to position some of their other solutions that are going to be slightly superior in technology, I don't think they're going to work. Okay, so that's what makes it very interesting. Dave, any commentary by any chance? Any questions?
No, I mean, I was not familiar with this solution before I took a look at the deck, but I agree with you. It's interesting to see how that strategy lays out and what'll ultimately end up happening kind of moving forward, because as I mean, not even directly tied to the ERP space, but just from a more general standpoint, it's going to be a real challenge to maintain and continue to develop all of these different solutions. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the long run of that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense for those individual categories. Just don't know what the sustainability of the development side of it's going to be.
So, Dave, my commentary on that is going to be, as a customer, I think these guys are in really tough spot. Okay, and the reason why I call this as a tough spot is either they can be on something like Epicor BisTrack, which is obviously going to be very clunky technology. It's probably not going to receive as much R&D dollars as some of the other products, because obviously they are driving a lot more revenue for Epicor. So obviously they are going to get a lot more attention. There's no question about that. Now, the other choice the customers are going to have, let's say if they don't go for this solution, they are probably going to go for something like Acumatica, NetSuite, the newer solutions that we have in the market. But then on top of that, you have really thick add-on. Okay, and that thick add-on, sometimes, let's say if it is promoted by a VAR, and they might have 3 installations, 5 installations. So now, if you were to predict the life of those solutions, okay, it gets really tricky, and sometimes it's very hard to predict, whether they are going to survive in the market or not. So again, in my mind, it's a very tough spot to be, because let's say if you go for Acumatica, NetSuite, or any other vanilla ERP solution, if the VAR goes out, then the vanilla solution is either going to be very expensive to customize, or it's just not going to work. So what can you do? So again, it's a very tricky space.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, to add on to that, I would say, you're probably looking at a lot of legacy businesses. So there's, not probably more acquisition cycle than, kind of new growth. But even to that point, it's still going to be a challenge to decide how to move forward in that scenario, because you're still, additional acquisitions, you're going to have larger facilities, which means you need more controls, more data, to be able to operate efficiently. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of see how it shakes out on both sides.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I guess these solutions are really designed for that lower end of the smaller segment, I would say. I don't think any company that is going to be, let's say, $100 million is probably going to be running on this solution. So this is really a full suite solution for companies that are probably moving away from QuickBooks to spend some years. They might be at $20, $30 million, 40, 50. That's probably my range for solutions like this. I don't think they can get to $100-200 million on the solution. Okay. So overall, from the positioning perspective, there are 2 or 3 different solutions in Epicor portfolio as well. Obviously, this is going to have very, very, very small market. Even Epicor Eclipse, I would say, is probably have bigger install base than this one, just because their market is bigger. They are going after all of the verticals in the HVAC ecosystem, and I don't recall the name of which particular either buying group or just very large distributor who was trying to supply it to all of their suppliers, and that was a plumbing company, if I remember correctly. Johnston Supply, I guess, right? Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, so they were in that, and obviously this is very specific as well. So unless you have any other comments, I'll start on the slides, Dave. No? Okay. All right. So here, and in the positioning as well, you can find a lot of different layers. So in this particular case, they are saying Epicor BisTrack with 50 years of industry experience, we apply a deep understanding to our ERP software for building material suppliers, is how they are defining. But even among building material suppliers, there is a very small niche that they are going after. It's not all of the building material supplier. I would say the companies that are probably going to be in the concrete space, probably, this is probably not going to work for them, because their distribution model is very different. The way they integrate with, let's say, the weighing machine, the way they sort of, uh, take their raw materials, it's very, very different compared to what these guys are doing. This is a very specific space in the kitchen windows and door space, and they are saying distributors and metal service centers. So a lot of people, when they think of metal and lumber, they are going to think that, this should be similar to probably Infor Visual. And Infor Visual has a very unique offering as well, because typically when you are going to get into that piece inventory, consumption-based inventory, scenarios, that's where it gets really tricky in the metal space. And here we are not talking about that metal. We are talking about the metal door. So again, very, very, very different space in general. So here are some of the product categories. And by the way, this is the ecosystem that I'm talking about. I think this is where they have the largest number of customers. So this is the Pro Sales. Okay. Pro Sales is a magazine. They publish the top 100 distributors in their ecosystem. So they have a community of, and I don't know how large that community is, to be honest. Sometimes that could be 1,000 distributors that could be part of that community. So it could be a magazine, it could be a media company, it could be just the industry influencers, or it could be a buying group, depending upon how they are positioned. So Pro Sales, they probably have a lot of layers of that. Primarily, it's a magazine media company, but their goal is really to bring this community together. And these are the products that they like to focus on. So it's going to be decking, it's going to be drywall, it's going to be insulation, kitchen and bath, lumber. But lumber, again, I think there are layers in lumber as well. Not everything lumber. Only related to home construction, residential construction is what they are talking about from the lumber perspective. Roofing, and again, if you look at the common trend among these categories, it's all residential construction is what we are looking at. Siding and trim, technology, and technology could be all over the place, I guess. And there are going to be some of the ERP systems that is going to be part of this ecosystem as well. Tools and equipment, windows and doors. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to that. I'm sure, point of sale systems are going to fall into that technology bucket as well. But yeah, I mean, I would put this into the either, kind of state and or regional, home products type distributor. Here in Michigan, we've got a company like that, John's Lumber. It's a statewide business, multiple locations.
Yep.
But they are in this space selling directly to mostly, builders and pro grade people. So not obviously big box type of a Home Depot, something like that. It's completely different.
Could not agree more. I completely agree. And by the way, this is the sample of, the similar customers that Dave mentioned. So here we have 84 Lumber, we have ABC Supply. Obviously, the awards that they are distributing are for these customers as well. And sometimes they are going to have massive influence. They are probably going to have influence on the ERP system as well. Okay, so this is going to be America's construction source. And obviously, Epicor is going to be investing a lot in the sponsoring this particular media group because they are driving a lot of deals for them. So naturally, you have a little play there. Okay, so now let's look at some of the unique layers of what is common in this particular industry. And Dave, you are so spot on when you are talking about these individual stores, and they have a little e-commerce play, they have a little home delivery play, which is very unique. In this particular segment, I would think if you look at the TMS processes of this particular space, it's going to be very similar to your food and beverage. Okay, they also have very small trucks. Sometimes, let's say, if you look at segments such as frozen food, okay, if you go to 3PLs, they probably will not be able to deliver for you. So, and things like frozen food, meat, those are very, very unique verticals. So that's where you're going to have very similar processes, of your TMS, the way these guys work. Now, we have seen the electronic signature in the HVAC space as well. Now, these electronic signatures are not necessary as such, okay? Like, this is not necessarily a regulated space where you need to get signature. These are not very expensive materials that you are supplying to these customers, but it's just the culture that these industries have, and they have to enable those processes because their customers are probably going to expect that when you are going to be delivering something, you still have to sign. It's a very traditional way of doing that. I've delivered something to you. Now you can track all of these things electronically. So signature don't have a lot of meaning in this particular industry, but you are going to find similar layers in this vertical as we saw in case of your Eclipse industries. So here on the e-commerce, commentary, here we have integrate the online store with your co-op and buying group. And that's a big deal, guys. That integration itself is very expensive because sometimes what these buying groups are trying to do is they are trying to promote their own SKU mix. They are trying to impose, okay, these are the only SKUs. If you are a member of my buying group, you can sell. Okay, so you have a lot of standardization. Obviously there are some incentives aligned from the buying group as well, but they help in a lot of ways because they are getting the discounts. If that's how their business model works. But from the integration perspective, that's where the real differentiator is. So if you are going to go for a vanilla platform, they are not going to have this integration, and that's what we saw in the case of your HVAC, plumbing, electrical codes. When you have to integrate with your industry standards, good luck with that, because that's going to be really expensive. So your choice is going to be either you buy this or you buy a very HVAC flavored solution on top of NetSuite Acumatica. Then only it will work for you. Now here we are talking about use dynamic pricing to display retail and negotiated pricing for customer segments. By the way, the pricing is very unique as well, and this is the first time I have seen pricing like this in any verticals. Okay, I think this is going to be, and most likely you will be able to relate with this because most likely it is probably going to be very similar to the way print space works. Okay, and so far my understanding was that I'm always afraid of playing in print space because I feel that it's very complicated in general. Okay, it's very challenging in the print space, but this space is equally challenging as well once you look at their bombs, the way they are doing this.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, my takeaway on that, Sam, is it's kind of I chuckle only from the standpoint of your comment that everybody's kind of looking for a different thing to display to to their customers, and these the different buying groups, the different customer groups, all of that kind of plays into that scenario. So understanding what people need to see, what groups they're a part of, and all of the layers that go in from an integration standpoint. You're smart to point that out because that could be really challenging for a lot of solutions.
Exactly. And just one more comment there, Dave. And overall, the way the buying group space is evolving, the way their business models are evolving, there is a chance that we might end up being something like, the way your alcohol or tobacco or cannabis space works. And you know how challenging that space is. If you are selling, let's say in Canada, and you can't sort of own the product. LCBO here in Canada is going to own the product. So I don't know why you have an ERP system, because you anyways don't own the inventory. Okay, then they are going to release the inventory when somebody is going to buy that. So you never sort of touch the product. Okay, you are really a broker in that game. So it becomes very, very, very difficult to implement mainstream ERP systems in that vertical. And my take in this is going to be the way these purchasing groups, GPUs, buying groups, the way they are shaping up, there is a very good chance that a lot of industries might follow the similar business model. So this is probably going to disrupt the whole ERP industry. So it's a very, very, very interesting play. Okay, so here we have some more commentary here overall from the BisTrack delivery perspective. And this is the delivery aspect, the TMS layer that we have that is very tightly embedded as part of your operational processes. So here, this is the drag and drop journey builder tools to intelligent plan for trucks and drivers. So typically, when you look at some of the mainstream ERP systems, they don't really get into WMS and TMS. Okay, they might have a tiny WMS module, but that's not a real WMS. But when you have to plan around your own vehicles, good luck with that. Because most of even the smaller TMS systems, for example, let's say if you look at some of the rate shopping platforms, they don't really have those fleet management workflows built up. Okay, so how are you going to manage those fleet, and how are you going to be doing the scheduling? And this is where you get into that transportation business, which is very different operationally in general. So again, when I look at food business, when I look at this business, it's very unique. Now here they are saying it's easy to assign drops, for specific journeys, I guess. And then they are saying they have a lot of different things. And this is the whole, it's very complicated, because now they are talking about you have to estimate the capacities, driver preferences, the, customer signing requirements, including last minute changes. That's a lot from the operations perspective, right, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be really interesting to see all of this, in a live scenario, because you can just see the challenges that happen. You've got a last minute order that potentially could have been bundled on a delivery, let's say, or a customer pickup, but it didn't get picked because the notification didn't kick out to the to the warehouse correctly. And your point about the majority of mainline systems not including some of this functionality, I mean, it's spot on, because I've have worked in some larger systems that don't include this, and you end up, whether or not you bring in a bolt-on or kind of handle it outside of the system in a third party manner, all of it becomes challenging because of this communication and the request from the customer, because in their mind they're thinking, well, I let I put the order in online, I called, and the reality of that communication flow and that process, it is just not that seamless. So the fact that this solution has the ability to do some of those things, as I said, I'd love to see some of that functionality and flow in person, because I'm sure that it's impressive.
I mean, the functionality is going to be there. The technology is going to be clunky. That's the only thing. But I mean, it's okay. At least, it's functionally rich. Right. Okay, so here we have, picking tickets are printed just before picking begins to reflect the very latest information. That's very common, and allows staff to print a complete journey manifest. And journey manifest is very different than your pick ticket. So let's say if you're looking at traditional ERP systems, then what they are going to do, you are going to have a pick ticket, and you simply pick and pack inside your warehouse, then you have shipment ready, and then you go to a shipping solution that is probably going to be shipping this for you. But here you are printing a journey manifest. The way journey manifest works is it's almost like your pick ticket, but you are picking for a vehicle, because you are trying to sort of manage the load of the vehicle. And again, this is a very transportation centric scenario. This is typically part of TMS system, so they are able to house a lot of this functionality as part of the ERP itself. So here they are saying drag and drop, and this is a very dispatch scheduling workflow of a transportation company. They typically manage the workload of trucks. When you get into the LTL, FTL scenario, that's what they are doing, but at a very small scale. So here we have the customer information such as job numbers, maps, directions, and delivery notes and credit notes. Now, this could be very confusing when you look at this one, and you are probably going to be thinking that, okay, isn't field service similar to this? No, because in field service, you are going to have the map, you are going to have the route, but you don't necessarily are packing the orders that you need to distribute, and you are not optimizing the route for that, right? So that's a very different workflow. This is completely different. This is pure play TMS, but they are able to provide that integrated as part of your ERP processes. And that's why when you look at the bigger companies, typically they are going to go for either Oracle, honestly speaking, bigger installation. Oracle does really well in this space. And then obviously Microsoft is the leader in this space as well when you look at the bigger installations. And the reason why they are leader is because your TMS processes are built as part of your Microsoft Dynamics F&O. Oracle has that built as well. There are some other companies, for example, QAD has that built too. But a lot of them are not going to have that. SAP, they don't even have WMS built up. You have to use third party. You have to use best of breed. So again, it's a very design architecture discussion in terms of where you want to host these processes and how that is going to impact your operations. So Journey Planner, some more comment here. BisTrack web user experience to provide easy to use built-in dispatch, delivery planning capabilities. BisTrack Journey Planner simplifies the critically important task for delivery scheduling, vehicle selection. Okay, then you have the manifest creation. It helps you keep customers satisfied, optimize truck and driver usage. Can you believe this? How deep that is? Go ahead, Dave. You have a comment?
No, I mean, it's really interesting to see this level of functionality included in this, because again, I think from the kind of the niche perspective, the vertical perspective, right? You think about it, and you know that this has been developed over the course of time based on those needs, but you can see how valuable this would be. And when you start to compare some of this deep functionality to some of the to your point, the larger systems, you're going to be scrambling to figure out how to handle this functionality. So it's really interesting to see that deep of functionality included.
Yeah, and we are going to review some screens as well, and it's really interesting. So here, some more commentary here. They are saying real-time order tracking. And by the way, order tracking is not really limited to your number one, just the warehouse. It's the entire journey. So this is where your supply chain, people talk about supply chain. And this is not, in this particular case, you don't necessarily have the third-party integration. When they talk about supply chain network, in that, as your shipment is moving through multiple movements across the supply chain, it could be your own vehicle, or it could be train, it could be something else, right? So you can track the whole thing. In this particular case, you are managing it at a local level. So that's the functionality that they are talking about. But it's very interesting overall. Then here they are saying get to each delivery site assigned by mapping software, easily download and document deliveries and pickups. And by the way, one more comment I'll make is in the food space, in this space as well, you are going to find a lot of bolt-ons that sit on top of e-commerce platforms that typically do this, to be honest. But then you are not going to get that supply chain perspective. You might have a bolt-on WMS, TMS, they might, but inventory is never going to be aligned. So it becomes really tricky to manage that way.
Yeah, I mean, this to me is a business that e-commerce came in, way after the fact, and is typically a complete afterthought for most of these businesses. They're not driving any significant amount of volume or revenue through their e-commerce platforms. It's I mean, it gets back to, some of the conversations about where does this data ultimately live, and, how you can make this information more accessible to your customers. And that's a perfect spot, a perfect conversation on the e-commerce side of this, because of, how this business has developed over the course of time.
Yeah, could not agree more. Great comments. So here, and they are talking about proof of delivery as well, which in my opinion, this is a process issue. They just don't need it. They are doing this just to sort of, I think they are doing this to enable more of the cycle counting process, to be honest, as well as just doing the matching, because you need signature to be able to match your documents. But if you have the real ERP, probably you don't need that, but they are still doing that in this industry. Then you have the barcode scans. Drivers can capture delivery time and location, picture of goods delivered. By the way, you need signature in transportation industry as well. And that's the biggest failure point in the entire transportation industry. It's going to be your driver inputs. Okay, when they are going to be sending inputs, okay, they are going to be writing, when they say write 9, it might appear as 6. And, and you have to pay them based on that. So it becomes very, very, very interesting in that space. Okay, some people try to do, mobile data capture, but integration, good luck with that. So it's a huge challenge in that space. And now we are talking about drivers here as well, and it's very, very, very hard to get data from them. Okay, so here we have some more commentary here. Pickup you have made, you can avoid costly write-offs that may otherwise occur. They are talking about that. Then you have this is optimized purchasing and stock control. So here they have this suggested replenishment orders, but that's very common in general, traditional and buying group EDI. Okay, so buying groups, again, they are very, very, very interesting to work with. And now they have the EDI as well. Can you believe this? Okay, so this is not going to be just the customer. These are more of the influencers that have come up with the ADI flow because of the order volume. So now you have to figure out how to integrate with them if you want to work with them. Very interesting. Then you have the extensive costing, including project buys. Then you have VMI, and this is the first time I have really seen the vendor management inventory referred somewhere. To be honest, it's sort of there, but it's not there with a lot of different ERP systems. But in this industry, they seem to have that. Supplier rebate, accrual, and tracking, that could be very tricky as well, especially when you are looking at this whole buying group relationship, the way it works. You need to pass your credit from your buying group to member to buying group. It's all over the place overall from the financial operational processes. Here they are talking about integrated manufacturing and configurator. Configurator in general is big, huge in this space, and the whole estimation module is going to be part of your configurator workflow. So again, if you were a manufacturer in the space, then your processes are going to be very different than being just a dealer. Dealer have very different business, but even they might require a little bit of manufacturing because they might be manufacturing a little bit. So this particular product is obviously for dealers. So here they are talking about support for door and window shops, truss and panel plants, millwork, and other component manufacturers. Work orders tied to sales orders. And guys, we are going to review these screens, even though they are talking about work orders tied to sales orders. That doesn't sound like a big deal because most ERP systems are probably going to do that, right? But the way these guys are picking and packing and receiving, it's very different. Sometimes that could be a process issue, okay? And sometimes that's a need. So they have the built-in product configurator tool. Then they have the multi-location, and multi-location accounting is very, very, very different. Okay, not every ERP system is going to support that. Especially when you look at the manufacturing, they don't really have the branch accounting. Branch accounting in general is very different. And so, if you are going to have your either channel-based business or you're going to have retail-based business, make sure you have the branch accounting supported. And that's why branch accounting is supported as part of this. So they are saying multi-location, multi-level, work orders with automated location transfers. And that's where the real trick is, the way replenishment is going to work. Centralized multi-location dispatch and delivery planning and routing, that's a very unique functionality. You are only going to find in systems like this. Vehicle and load planning, again, very, very unique. Driver manifest, job site delivery location specification. Dave, comments?
No, it's like you said, it's pretty interesting to see some of this functionality. So, interested to get into some of the screens. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, so when you look at these screens, this is the mobile experience, and mobile experience is probably the easiest to enable. I mean, you can probably hook up your mainframe to your mobile screen, no big deal, and you can create really pretty screens. So mobile screens are probably going to be okay. Even though in my eyes, these are still very legacy. In general, the way UI is, the way UX is, it's very legacy. One of the things that you are going to notice is going to be this is the picking process from the mobile perspective, and they are able to support. So one unique thing that I have never seen before, okay, this is going to be getting your delivery note number, okay, as part of your picking process, as well as carrier. Let's think about that for a second. Carrier as part of your picking process. Typically, you are going to have the product, you are going to have SKU, you are going to have quantity, you are going to have lot number. Where do you have carrier? That typically happens after your picking packing process. In this particular case, they need that. That's how their operations are designed. Now, Dave, this could be a process issue, and sometimes that's how industry works.
Yeah, I'm not familiar enough to be able to comment on that specifically, but definitely interesting.
Yeah. Other than that, I didn't notice anything else here. Other things are okay. Now, this is your WMS experience. So obviously, when you are going to have this mobile experience, it's probably not going to have the real-time connectivity. For real-time connectivity, you probably require a lot more firepower in the background. And most of these systems are deployed on a very lean infrastructure. They are not designed to support the transaction volume of $100 million to $100 million company. Some people may argue that, you are not really utilizing your ERP, maybe utilizing only for accounting. You could run a $1 billion company on that, but that's not the real ERP. The real ERP is when you are processing your end-to-end transaction. So in this particular case, what these systems typically do, especially WMS, so this is a very offline experience, okay? So you are keeping these things inside your mobile, and once you have accumulated, actually you're pushing those entries to your server afterwards, and that's why you have this whole send function. Now that's a very different experience overall. There are going to be a lot of reconciliation issues, there are going to be a lot of technology syncing issues, okay? So good luck with that, in reconciling that. But overall, this is a very legacy experience. Go ahead. You have a comment? No? Okay. So here, picking against the sales order as opposed to picking, based on a pick list, right? So your traditional ERP processes are going to be that you are picking against a pick list. In this particular case, you are picking against a sales order. Again, very different industry. So now, do you really have to? Probably not. Okay. You can probably, optimize your processes here, but this is how this industry works for the most part. And that's why this solution had to sort of customize their flow to fit the industry processes. But, let's say if you want to grow and get to $200 million, when let's say you are going to be acquiring a lot of companies, you have one company that is going to be doing your building material, the next company is doing a little bit of construction. Good luck with that, because you are probably going to require 2 ERP, because this is never going to work for the construction. So at a certain point, you probably would require, streamlining your processes. For smaller businesses, this might be okay. So this is the POD experience. I really don't know why you need signature in this industry. Maybe I'm overthinking here, but they all require signature in this industry for some reason. And by the way, when you are going to look at the demos, they are all going to talk about, how much integration they have. Okay, so we are talking about the call center experience here. When the customer is going to call, the screen is going to pop up. It's going to be, they are going to have their name. You are not going to get this experience even with SAP. Believe me on this, okay? How do you beat this? Because obviously these guys are trying to provide a lot more from the functionality perspective. But when you look at the core operational streamlined processes, that's where these solutions are going to fall short. They are also going to fall short overall in terms of the technology development. So here they have the integration, but how friendly that is going to be to use. I mean, I don't know how many customers can really afford to use Mitel, and there are going to be only few phone providers that they are going to be integrated with. So either you can switch everything to Epicor and the integration that they have, or this is probably not going to work for you. They also have vendor side calling. I've never seen that before. Okay, so this is the supplier call. You can record the calls, and I don't know how sophisticated these servers are, because when you are going to get that call recorded and that is going to be hosted inside your ERP database, good luck with that. The pricing is very unique as well. Okay, now pricing is very important for this industry, the way they are doing. So they are able to compare and match to other locations' pricing. And that's a very branch accounting centric functionality. They are able to track competitive pricing. So now if you're keeping your competitors' pricing as part of your ERP, then you'll be able to compare that. Otherwise, I don't know how you are going to be comparing this. Okay. And then you also have the compare and match to catalog pricing, which is common in these industries, especially when you talk about industrial distribution space. And this functionality is very, very, very hard to implement. And sometimes it could take 7 days just because of one minor price change in the vendor catalog, because you have to go to every single catalog that you have to communicate with your customers. You have to update in your internal system. That handshake is extremely, extremely fragmented in general in most industries. So they are able to support that as part of the system. Comment, Dave?
No, it's I've seen some businesses that on that price matching side of things, it's interesting to see what they line out for this. And it's obviously a retail environment, so they're trying to appease appease their customers.
Exactly.
And retail, from the standpoint, even in that B2B space, they're still trying to appease that that competitive price point. But what I was going to say is I've seen some businesses kind of go down that rabbit hole and spend more time, and effort and cost than it would be to just discount it and move along. So it's interesting to see, again, this level of functionality. I wonder how often this is happening, where they're having to do these things to be able to go through this entire cycle, then to be able to kind of put that back into what appears to be their planning cycle for price impact. Because I see the note on there saying measure impact of past and future price changes in one of those quadrants. So it's just interesting to see, again, this level of functionality here. And I'd be curious to understand how widely this is utilized versus just matching a big box, let's say, lumber price.
Yeah. So honestly speaking, obviously there is a little bit of marketing here, and whatever is going to be mentioned, that might not be reflected as is, as part of the system, to be honest. Okay. It relies on a lot of different assumptions. Number one, you need to have data. That is always trickier. Number two, the assumption is that everything you are using is from Epicor. Okay. If you don't do that, then obviously you are going to struggle a little bit. So just one minor caveat there overall. Now, when you look at the pricing, and pricing is very, very unique and different. I have never seen price sensitivity to be part of the pricing equation. Here we have roles such as product manager. Again, very uncommon in manufacturing verticals. You might call them as brand manager, and they are probably marketers, but they don't necessarily use ERP. But in this particular case, they have a role called product manager. This is mind blowing. Typically, you hear these terms in tech industry. And then they have the competitor pricing right here. They are selecting the competitor. So obviously the assumption is that you are keeping all of that data. And then you have the price sensitivity codes as well, which is very unique. Then you have a little bit of e-commerce experience here. So they are able to provide these portals, which is mind blowing. It's not a real e-commerce site, but it is just the portal that you can expose to your customer. And they have fairly decent built up portal, for this, where they can place the transactions, etc. So which is very, very, very interesting. Now, this is the e-commerce experience. Again, these are e-commerce portals, not really e-commerce site. You won't get any SEO juice here. This is really B2B experience. When you already have customers and you are simply trying to improve the experience, then you can probably use this, but it's going to be really clunky in general. But you are going to get everything that your Infor is probably going to position, that they have vendor portals. Acumatica is going to position, even though it is cloud native platforms, but their portals are not designed to be your e-commerce site. Okay, it's still very portal. It's not supposed to be e-commerce site. Obviously, if you want to implement e-commerce, then you have to go for an e-commerce platform, and that's a completely different technology in general. Here, and this is another very, very, very interesting layer. Okay. And this is your estimation tool, and they have integration with this. And this is another way of looking at these tools, how this industry works. For example, this is your, Sabris is one of the platform, and it's more of the estimation tool platform. And you are going to find a category of these tools. These are designed for very specific estimation processes for this industry. And there are going to be at least 5 or 6, and they have a little bit of quoting flow, a little bit of e-commerce flow, a little bit of POS flow. Okay, so very unique category, but then they are going to support integration with only specific ERP systems. And this is one way to find out, okay, which are the ERP systems that are prevalent in this particular industry. For example, so let's say if you were to draw the comparison, we are talking about Epicor BisTrack, Epicor Eagle, Epicor Catalyst, okay, Epicor ECS, and Epicor acquired pretty much everything in this particular space because they obviously want to monopolize this space. So there's a very smart strategy. Now, ECI is actually following the same strategy. They acquired Spruce because they are following the footsteps of Epicor, but at a smaller scale. So they go after very, very QuickBooks size customers. Epicor is going to be when you have outgrown QuickBooks. So they are going to be, 2 to 5 million is what ECIs play. I would say Epicor is going to be 10 to 30, 50 is that's how I would define Epicor's market, especially for BisTrack. This is going to be carriage and some mom and pop. This is going to be RFMS. Phoenix Business Systems, we have Prosperity, ERP, not as mainstream. But these are the ERP systems that are going to be really prevalent in this industry. Now, let's look at the quoting workflow, okay? So this is very unique, okay? This is not your CAD software, but you probably have similar capabilities because you are looking at the engineering flow of, designing your kitchen. So you have a little bit of construction flow there, but it's sort of the overlap of construction and manufacturing. That's where, things are really, really difficult in general. So here we are talking about kitchen design, and in kitchen design, you have to go through the whole engineering process, and then that is going to spit the bomb. And that's where the real trick is. So that's where this integration is going to be super handy. If you don't have this integration, you are probably going to struggle a lot. So this is where, these tools, and there are a lot of different tools that do just this. They are going to specialize in kitchen design, windows design, door design, some of the things from the residential construction perspective. Now, once you get to your ERP system, this is where you are going to get the document, and the document itself is very involved. The way their SKUs work is very different. Okay, and these SKUs, so I don't know if you are able to see this, Dave, and let me see if I can blow it up a little bit. I actually downloaded a tool. You know what? Let me not try that. Maybe I can try. Okay, can you see this one, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay, it's much bigger, right?
Yeah.
So here you have the SKUs, and these SKUs are going to be, so for example, the name of the SKU is going to be, SOCAPs, but then you have the numbering scheme there, 417, 418, 419, and that's a very unique scheme because you don't have these SKUs stored as part of your ERP system. So how are you getting this bomb? Okay, so this is a very configurator experience, but the way it is implemented is very different in general. And this is the same problem that you are probably going to find in your print space as well. And we have some more things that are very unique. I think the SKU numbering is probably going to be the most critical thing here. That is going to be really difficult to implement. Okay, now the whole sequence number, and this sequence number we have seen in a lot of different verticals. Epicor, Eclipse also had the similar sequence number, but they had this more for the release, as opposed to, so this whole sequence number process is mind-blowing. I think this is definitely a little bit of process issue, but this is how the industry works. So here they are saying the way their processes are set up, they are going to get this design from your tool, you put it into your ERP, so you don't really have these SKUs, but then you are trying to design the whole BOM. The way the whole BOM assembly works is just the reverse process, so it's very different. So here they are saying override product details on the imported BOM. And in my mind, this is really a configured order. But, for somebody who has been doing this business this way for 15 years, they will not be able to relate with the ERP process because that requires change in mindset. So yeah, it's very, very, very different. Here, and again, this is not really manufacturing. So after you get the BOM, then you are selecting the suppliers. And, obviously they have come up with many different ways of selecting these suppliers. So each of these SKU that you are going to have, they are going to go to one of the suppliers and they are going to supply, and then your job is going to be to really assemble this. That's what you are trying to do with this BOM. But again, the whole process is reversed. And this is another tool, Dave, that I was talking about. So this is that e-commerce quoting estimation, kitchen design tool that they have. So I think this is called Read 2D, and they can do a lot more things from the construction perspective as well. But the output of that is going to go directly to ERP. So that's where that integration is really tricky. This is another one. This is slightly newer, I would say, IQ Plus. They are going to have a little bit of e-commerce flow and the flavor. So sometimes these tools sit on top of your Magento Shopify, but then when you are going to be needing that tight integration with ERP, that's where, it gets really tricky. So here, let me try to do this again. So this one is the whole BOM, and the BOM is very, very, very complex and involved. The way this works. I mean, there are going to be at least 20, 30 items that you need to plan. By the way, Scheduling is probably going to be very different as well if you're going to be manufacturing versus distribution. Here you have some process such as rafter cutting charge. Now that's a very unique process as well. That's at the line item level. Okay, so again, very, very, very interesting process. It will be very, very hard to implement this in mainstream ERP system because that needs to be at the line level. Now this is where I think this is the traditional BOM process, but the way these guys like to think, they think very differently about the BOM. So here they are getting a material, but then they are removing the material, and they are sort of creating a raw material against the finished goods, and then they are creating those operations, which is your routing steps, which is very standard BOM. But the way their operations is, the way they like to think of this workflow is completely different from the other industries. So this is very unique as well. Now, the way their operations are designed, that is very unique. And Dave, I don't know if you have seen this in any other industries. So here we are talking about computing the hours and the labor rate based on your source quantity, based on the finished quantity, percentage of source cost, fixed quantity. Very unique.
Yeah, I'm not. I was just trying to, as you were speaking there, I was trying to work through how that would necessarily come to be. I mean, obviously there's a reason behind it, but I can't think of, I off the top of my head, I can't think of why that would be. Interesting. Very interesting.
So I think the reason, this is how they always operated, I guess. Let's say if you are going to buy 100,000 worth of cabinet, okay, how much labor do you have on that? Let's cut a percentage on top of that. Okay, so this is a very back of the envelope kind of approach, and that's how this industry approached, as opposed to calculating the real labor, because back in the days labor was probably not as expensive.
I mean, so that would make sense then. Yeah, I guess I could get behind that. That does make sense, but that was definitely not my first thought.
Exactly. I mean, it's just, in my opinion, I think some of these things are very manually created process. They don't need to be there. You can simplify this, but this is how the whole industry operated, and they created ERP systems for these things. Some things are really important. Overall, that whole integration, that's critical. Estimation, there's no way you can do that inside ERP system.
Yeah. Were you, Sam, I don't recall, were you able to find how long this has been around? This solution is when this solution was originally introduced?
So I don't have a date, but I think it's forever. So it started as mom and pop. They must have started competing with Epicor. Epicor must be losing a lot. So obviously Epicor had to go after them, and they bought it because obviously they were losing the market share.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this must be
I
designed.
mean, you can tell it's legacy. I was just curious if you had an idea on how legacy.
No, sorry. Here, okay, so this is a very interesting process as well, and they are calling it as more. This is at the customer order level, and you have delivered to. Okay, and deliver to is very similar to your ship to, but here it's not really ship to, because you are really combining your logistics processes as well. So you are going to find deliver to term probably in Oracle, probably in your Microsoft, because they have these TMS processes inbuilt as part of your ERP system. Other ERP systems, they don't have that, because their role finishes as soon as you finish your processes inside your warehouse, then you TMS take over. So it's very interesting the way these guys are approaching this. One more commentary here, and this is very here they are saying manufacture a new product similar to the following product. So in my mind, it's just cloning the BOM. That's what they are trying to do. But obviously it's very intuitive for a builder that is probably doing the building construction, who is probably not going to have PhD or probably MBA before they can create this code. So for them, obviously it's very intuitive the way they are doing, but in my mind, it's just cloning the BOM. That's what they are trying to do here. And then you are saying that you selected order lines as source products. Okay, so this is very interesting as well, because sometimes you are going to have the component in your database. So that's why you would use those lines. But the other times you are going to replace. So the whole inventory is going to be all over the place because you don't know what you have in your inventory. So finance is probably after part for these systems because they don't think from the financial GL inventory supply chain, the way supply chain is supposed to work. It's all very commerce, coding, BOM, engineering driven. It's a very technical mindset in my mind, not business. Okay, here we have one review. And let's do the time check. We have 4 minutes. How much time do you need, Dave, for commentary?
Just a couple of minutes.
Okay, so let's do this quickly and then we can open up the floor. So here they are saying invoicing takes 5 steps, which is too many. It might take as many with the mainstream ERP systems as well. But obviously, the person we have here, she is human resources and administrative assistant. Most likely, she is wearing a lot of hats, and probably, she does not have a very strong educational qualification. So, we are looking at a small business with fewer employees. So for them, they are very e-commerce-y. They can probably manage e-commerce systems. ERP is going to be very complicated for them in general. So that's why she's feeling that, 5 steps is probably too much. Once the ticket has been picked, you have to mark delivered. Then you must complete the AVOs. And I don't know what AVO means, to be honest. After that, then you must approve the orders, then click invoice. I believe there should be an easy way to combine some of these steps. I also wish you could pick multiple orders. Okay, so this is the point that I wanted to make. Most of these systems are really going to struggle with one-to-one scenarios. Okay, they are not designed for that. They are designed for very small operation, very serial operation. One sales order, one shipment, one invoice, one delivery. Okay, done. But when you are going to grow, you are going to get the efficiency in your processes when you are going to decouple them and you are going to analyze them individually. You are going to optimize them individually. And these systems are really, poor with that. So make sure you pay attention to your one-to-one scenarios. And that's the complaint that that person is trying to make. And I'll open up for commentary, Dave, for you.
Well, a lot of deep functionality. I know we said that throughout this, but it's really impressive to see some of what's been included here because you kind of know what what the competitive landscape is from a system perspective, but you also kind of understand what the genesis of this business is. So it's interesting to see that. One thing that we didn't touch on that you touched on was some of the different bolt-ons and just something to be mindful of for anybody that's out there and evaluating really any type of solution is, when I think we looked at 5 different kind of bolt-ons that potentially you would be in and working in that have to, not only integrate, but, what happens when one of those, when one of those transactions gets lost, what happens when, it gets duplicated, all of those intricacies around your business processes are things that you need to be mindful of when you're evaluating these systems, when you're taking a look at one system versus another system. So, where it wins in deep functionality for certain aspects, because of how it's probably grown and that industry has grown, you're going to then deal with on the opposite side, probably some additional bolt-ons that maybe you wouldn't if you went with a little bit larger selection and you had maybe a VAR creating some integrations custom for you. So I think it's, worth mentioning that that's a consideration when you're evaluating this stuff.
Yeah, could not agree more. More comments, Dave? Any other observations that stuck out to you?
No, I think, the only other thing I would say, kind of back to the comment about, some of the from a process perspective, and you made the very specific comment, and I've seen it happen in integrations and in real life, but it's that thought process around when you are going to be implementing ERP, that is the time to evaluate business process. And just because this is the way that you've always done it, and that's how maybe the industry works, this is your opportunity to make a, to make a change and to get everybody, on board with that change. Because when you make these decisions and kind of live with that process and you build the system around existing process that is not well functioning, you're just recreating more problems down the road, because the more sophisticated the systems are, the more transactions that get written, and the more integration and customization that needs to happen, which ultimately means it's going to cost you more time, energy, and effort to maintain this system over the course of time. When if you would have just evaluated and potentially changed your processes going in, you would have been probably far better ahead. So
could not agree more. Any more comments, Dave? No. All right, guys. So that's it for today. If you joined for the first time, it was part of our industry series, for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another solution or the vendor. On that note, thanks everyone for tuning in tonight.